I was halfway through reviewing a client's brand pitch when my phone buzzed. I glanced down expecting a meeting reminder or a meme from Lily. Instead, I saw my mother's name. We changed the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Just like that. No punctuation beyond the period. No explanation. No warning, just finality. My fingers froze above my keyboard. I stared at the screen as if reading it a second longer might change the meaning. Then I did what I always did. When my mother delivered a blow, I acted unfazed. I typed back, "How funny, how brave you think you are. Ha ha." But the moment I hit send, my hands trembled. I pushed away from my laptop, unable to breathe. The house. My house. She was talking about the home that legally belonged to me, the one my grandmother Eleanor left me in her will. It wasn't supposed to end like this. After grandmother passed, I remember sitting in the stuffy office of Parker and Stein with my parents and younger brother Ethan. My mother wore a sapphire brooch and tight smile. My father his pressed blazer and permanent impatience. I was still in a fog of grief. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the will. Most of it was standard donations to charities, a few personal items to friends. But then came the line, "I leave my home located at 23 Maple Lane in full to my granddaughter, Valentina Harper." Silence fell like a dropped pane of glass. My mother blinked. My father leaned forward as if he'd misheard. "Excuse me." My mother said, voice clipped. "That house is part of the estate. She didn't mean to exclude us." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Harper, your mother was of sound mind. The will is notarized and witnessed. She specified Valentina as the sole heir to the property." My father's jaw tightened. Ethan shifted awkwardly in his seat. I remember my heart thumping not from joy, but from shock. That house was the heartbeat of our family. Holidays, birthdays, burnt apple pies in November. Grandmother's porch swings, her lavender-scented scarves. Afterward, I tried to be gentle. Over coffee the next morning, I told my parents, "Nothing has to change. I want to keep the house the way grandmother intended, but I'm not shutting you out." My mother stirred her coffee like she was punishing it. "We just didn't expect this," she said. "I'm not trying to take anything from you," I replied. "I just want to honor her memory." I believed that would be enough. Now, staring at the text, I knew better. I grabbed my coat and keys, heart-thumping, and walked out the office door without bothering to explain. Whatever came next, this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the war they had just declared and the silence that came before it. Before it was a legal battleground, before it became the object of family war, the house was sanctuary. Grandmother Eleanor's craftsman sat quietly at the corner of Maple and Ninth, wrapped in ivy vines and memories. I used to joke that the porch had better stories than most people because it had held everything from birthday laughter to whispered heartbreak. I learned how to make apple pies in that blue-tiled kitchen. I cried over my first breakup in the sunroom, while grandmother handed me tea in a mug that said, "You are enough." I wrote my college admissions essay in the bay window seat overlooking the garden she never let go wild. To me, that house didn't just contain our history. It was our history. My parents never saw it that way. After the will was read, their disappointment barely stayed beneath the surface. My mother Clara kept saying grandmother hadn't been thinking clearly. My father Martin kept reminding me of how much money the house was worth. Ethan, my brother, said very little. That's how he's always been neutral, quiet, floating somewhere between keeping the peace and avoiding it. "You're lucky," he said once after the reading. "It's a big responsibility, though. That house needs work." "I know," I said, "but I'm not selling it." Grandmother would have hated seeing it gutted and flipped. And I meant it. I wasn't interested in turning it into a modern shell of itself. I wanted to preserve what mattered: the leaded glass, the creaky floorboards that knew my steps, the floral wallpaper in the hallway that hadn't changed since the 70s. The trouble started with the paint. I'd carefully selected a soft lavender for the dining room, something that honored the light in that space but refreshed it a little. My mother came by while the painter was halfway through. She didn't even say hello. "Your grandmother kept that wallpaper for 40 years, she said flatly, running her hand along the edge where the paper had been peeled back. "It was peeling," I told her. "The humidity got to it. She loved that pattern. I know, I kept a full panel. I'm going to frame it in the hallway, so it's still here. She didn't respond. Just stood there, arms crossed, like the room itself offended her. That was how it went. Every change I made, even the smallest ones, felt like a personal insult to her. She saw me not as a caretaker, but as a thief chipping away at what she believed belonged to her. Still, I tried. I invited them to Sunday dinners. I gave updates on the restorations. Ethan showed up sometimes. Father came once. Clara came often, but never kindly. She'd stand in the entryway with her mouth tight, scanning every detail. She didn't come to connect. She came to keep score. And I foolishly still believed if I played it right, I wouldn't have to choose between the house and my family. When I landed back in Seattle, I was exhausted, but proud. The pitch had gone better than I'd hoped. Our team secured the contract, and I'd even been asked to lead the rollout campaign. I texted Lily from the airport. I'm going to sleep for 2 days straight. She replied with a laughing emoji and, "You earned it, Queen." I took a rideshare straight from the terminal to Maple Lane. My suitcase bumped behind me as I walked up the steps, craving the familiar creak under my feet. The worn welcome mat grandmother never replaced. I reached for my keys, already thinking about reheating soup and crawling into bed. The key didn't fit. At first, I thought I was just tired, maybe twisting it wrong. I tried again and again. Then I noticed the deadbolt. It was new, polished wrong. My chest went tight. I called my mother. No answer. I tried my father. Voicemail. My heart started to pound. That's when the text came. "We changed the locks. You don't have a home anymore. This house belongs to the family, not just you." I didn't cry. Not yet. I stood on the porch with my suitcase beside me like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. My fingers fumbled for Ethan's number. "Did you know about this?" I asked the moment he answered. "Know about what?" "They changed the locks on grandmother's house. My house." There was a pause. "Oh, Valentina, I'm sorry. I didn't know they were going to do that." "Where are they?" "They went to the coast for the weekend." My voice broke finally. "Can you let me in? You have a key, don't you?" Another pause. "I don't. And even if I did, I can't get in the middle of this." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I ended the call and sat down on the porch steps, my legs suddenly too heavy. That's when I saw them. 3 black trash bags shoved beneath the azaleas. My name written in marker on masking tape. Inside, clothes crumpled in piles. Toiletries in plastic bags. Books. Old photographs. A cracked music box from my childhood. I opened one bag and found grandmother's apron balled up like trash, but the jewelry box wasn't there. Neither was the leather-bound journal she kept about the house, the one with decades of notes in her handwriting. My birth certificate passport all gone. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd kept what mattered. I called Lily. My voice barely worked. "I'll be there in 10, she said. When she arrived, we loaded everything into her trunk. She didn't ask questions, just drove. That night, I lay on her lumpy pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed every Sunday dinner, every polite nod every time I'd told myself they'll come around. They hadn't come around. They'd come for blood. Lily brought me tea, and I held the mug with both hands, trying to steady myself. "They can't do this," she whispered. I didn't respond, not because I disagreed, because I knew they already had. By Monday morning, I couldn't pretend this would resolve itself. Lily left a sticky note on the counter. "You've been quiet long enough. Now you fight." I spent the afternoon researching attorneys, my stomach tight with nerves. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just someone who knew the law better than my family knew how to twist it. Olivia Bennett returned my email within the hour. Her voice on the phone was calm, deliberate. When I explained the situation, she didn't hesitate. "That's called self-help eviction," she said. "And it's illegal even if they thought they had a claim, which they don't. You have the deed and the will, correct?" "Yes," I said. "The original will is missing, but I have the copy the estate lawyer sent after the reading." "That'll do for now. We'll request the certified copy from probate. In the meantime, let's schedule an emergency injunction." Her confidence steadied me. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy for being hurt. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't weak. I was just wronged. Olivia gave me a checklist document. Everything make a list of missing items. Record any communication from my parents or Ethan. She told me not to contact them directly. From this point forward, everything goes through me, but I didn't need to reach out. My mother had already started. That night, I got a notification. She'd posted a public message on social media. A sepia-toned photo of grandmother Eleanor's house captioned, "Some people forget where they came from. My mother built a legacy and now it's being turned into a business against everything she stood for." I'm heartbroken. The comments came fast. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years chimed in with shock and sympathy. "You're such a good daughter," one wrote. "I can't believe she'd do that," another. "Greed makes people do awful things." I didn't know whether to scream or sob. "She's controlling the story," I told Lily. "No," Lily said jaw tight. "She's manipulating it. There's a difference." Then came the voicemail. My father. His voice sounded like gravel. "You've made a mistake, Valentina. A big one. Getting lawyers involved. That's low. Your mother is devastated. If you think the family will stand by while you disgrace Eleanor's legacy, you're wrong. Drop this or regret it." I played it twice. The second time, I sat on Lily's kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, and finally let myself cry. Not because I was afraid, but because it confirmed what I hadn't wanted to believe. This wasn't about misunderstanding. It wasn't grief. It wasn't tension that time would smooth out. It was war, and they were willing to burn everything, me included, to win it. I forwarded the voicemail to Olivia. She responded 2 minutes later. "Let them talk. We're not backing down." And just like that, I knew I wouldn't either. The email's subject line read from Beatrice about Eleanor. I stared at it for almost a full minute before opening it. "Valentina, you don't know me well. I'm your grandmother's sister. We haven't spoken in years, but I believe there are things you need to see. Your grandmother asked me to hold on to them in case something like this happened. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. Beatrice Harper." I remembered Beatrice from scattered childhood holidays. She and my mother barely spoke. I'd always assumed it was some old grudge, the kind that fossilizes over time. Now I wondered if it had always been about the house. We met at her home just outside Tacoma. She lived in a modest cottage with faded roses and furniture that smelled faintly of cedar and sage. Beatrice didn't ask about my parents. She simply said, "Your grandmother trusted you in a way she couldn't trust anyone else." Then she opened a drawer and handed me a manila envelope. Inside were 3 things. Printed emails my parents corresponding with a real estate developer months before grandmother passed. They'd been negotiating a deal to sell the property complete with demolition plans and projected condo layouts. A handwritten letter in grandmother's unmistakable looping cursive. "Valentina, if you're reading this, I've passed. I know what they'll try to say. I've seen it coming for years." And finally, a USB drive. Beatrice played it for me on her desktop computer. I heard my grandmother's voice, steady, unwavering. "This is Eleanor Harper. I am of sound mind and body. I am making this recording because I believe my daughter Clara and son-in-law Martin may attempt to contest my will. My decision to leave my home to my granddaughter Valentina is made freely and with full understanding. She is the one who sees its soul." I didn't realize I was crying until Beatrice handed me a tissue. "She knew," I whispered. "She saw all of it coming." "She did," Beatrice said. "And she made sure you'd have what you needed when the time came." Back in Seattle, I delivered everything to Olivia. She read, listened, scanned, and then looked up at me with something close to fire in her eyes. "This changes everything." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because things were fixed, but because I finally had something stronger than fear. I had her voice, and it was loud enough to carry us both. The courthouse was gray and cold and humming with quiet tension. Olivia had prepped me for everything: what to wear, how to sit, when to speak, when not to. "Let your paperwork do the shouting," she said with a half smile. My parents were already seated when we entered. My mother didn't look at me. My father did, and there was nothing in his stare but disdain. Ethan sat behind them, his hands clenched, his eyes flicking between us like he didn't want to be there. The hearing moved quickly. Olivia presented the will, the certified deed, the emails, and finally the USB recording. The judge listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When it ended, the room felt different, like someone had cracked a window open in a place that had long gone stale. My parents' lawyer tried to argue abandonment, that I had left the property unattended, that they were simply securing family assets, but the judge cut him off. Miss Harper is the legal owner. Whether her parents agree with her grandmother's decision is not relevant. They had legal recourse if they wished to challenge the will. Changing locks and removing belongings is not one of them. My mother's lip quivered. My father's jaw twitched. The judge signed the injunction. They are to return full access to Miss Harper immediately. If any items are missing or damaged, this court will pursue further consequences. We stepped into the hallway and Olivia exhaled. That went better than expected. I nodded numb but grateful until a uniformed officer stepped forward. Valentina Harper. Yes. I need to ask you a few questions about a theft report filed by Clara and Martin Harper alleging you removed heirlooms and legal documents without permission. The hallway blurred. I felt the eyes of strangers, the prickle of judgment. Olivia stepped in fast. My client is not speaking further without a formal statement or legal summons. She is the owner of the property in question and the heir to the disputed items. The officer nodded reluctantly and stepped back, but the damage was done. Ethan lingered behind the others, staring at the floor. You knew they did this, I asked quietly. He looked up, eyes full of something like shame. I didn't know about the police report. But you knew they were willing to lie. He didn't answer. I didn't push. Back at Olivia's office, I sank into the chair across from her desk. They're never going to stop, are they? She looked me straight in the eye. That's why we don't either. And that's when I knew this wasn't just defense anymore. It was time to go on the offensive. The house was quiet when I returned, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow. Most of the furniture was still there, but everything personal had been stripped. The walls where grandmother's photos once hung were bare, faint outlines left behind like shadows that didn't want to let go. Her copper pans were gone. The rocking chair she read in every night had disappeared. The journal, her handwritten record of the home, its quirks, its stories, was nowhere. Olivia filed a theft report for the missing items. But even if we got some of it back, I knew parts of this house had been stolen in a way I couldn't ever fully recover. Still, I moved forward. I repainted the entryway. I hung new curtains. I opened the windows wide and let the spring air carry the dust and ghosts out into the yard. Then I turned the front parlor into what I had always imagined a small gallery space for local artists centered on themes of home memory and reclamation. Opening night came faster than expected. Lily brought wine, and a few neighbors, who had once looked at me with suspicion, now stood inside, admiring the art and chatting warmly. It wasn't packed, but it was full enough to feel alive. Ethan showed up just before closing. He held out a small, worn envelope. Found this in one of Father's old photo albums, he said. Thought you should have it. Inside was a photo of Grandmother Eleanor on the front porch, laughing in mid-motion. The way I remembered her sunlight in her hair, apron still tied, defiant joy in her smile. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. He nodded. You're doing something good here. I was still holding the photo when I saw her Clara standing just inside the door alone. She looked smaller, somehow older. Her eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in the walls, the crowd, the space she once tried to erase. When she reached me, she didn't offer a hug or a smile. Just one sentence. Your grandmother would have approved. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't an attack either. I nodded, tucking the photo into my pocket. I know. She turned and walked out without another word. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't need one. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It had become a living thing again. Walls breathing with stories, light spilling into rooms where silence once festered. The gallery had found its rhythm, hosting small exhibits every few months, each one rooted in truth transformation and the quiet beauty of survival. At work, I was promoted to creative director. Not because I'd been through hell and made it back, but because I'd shown up consistently, clearly, and with something to say. The experience hadn't broken me. It had sharpened me. Ethan and I met for coffee most weeks now. There was no grand reconciliation, but the effort was mutual. He didn't try to explain away the past, he just kept showing up. Sometimes that's enough. As for my parents, we existed at a careful distance. There were no more lawsuits, no more voicemails, just space and peace. Sometimes the absence of conflict feels like grace. One evening, I sat in the study grandmother's study with a cup of tea and the soft hum of the house around me. On the wall above her desk hung a framed quote she used to keep folded in her wallet. "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." Maya Angelou. I stared at it for a long time, then opened my journal and wrote, "They tried to lock me out of a house. I built something no one can evict me from." This home, this life was mine now, not just by law, but by love, by labor, by choice. And if anyone else out there has been betrayed by the ones who should have protected you, know this, you're not alone. You can still build something stronger starting now. Sitting in Grandmother Eleanor's study, I traced the edges of her framed Maya Angelou quote and let the weight of the past settle. This house, once a battlefield, taught me that home is more than walls, it's the courage to claim what's yours. My parents' betrayal, their lies, and the locks they changed couldn't erase what Grandmother entrusted to me. I learned that family isn't always the ones who share your blood. It's those who show up like Lily, or even Ethan in his quiet way. The fight for this house sharpened my resolve, showing me I could face manipulation and loss without losing myself. I discovered strength in standing firm, not just for my rights, but for the love and memories woven into these walls. Most importantly, I realized you can't control others' actions, but you can choose to rise above them. By transforming this space into a gallery, I built something unbreakable, a legacy of resilience and truth. No one can evict you from a home you create with purpose. For anyone betrayed by those meant to protect them, know this. You can rebuild stronger starting now.
I'd been the family disappointment for 7 years. 7 years since I'd dropped out of law school to pursue design. 7 years since Dad had stopped speaking to me for 3 months. 7 years since Mom had started telling people I was taking a break to find myself, instead of admitting I'd chosen art over a legal career. My brother Cameron was a neurosurgeon. My sister Vanessa ran a hedge fund. And then there was me, Alexis, 32 years old, living in what my parents called that cramped studio in Brooklyn, spending my days on art projects that they assumed barely paid my bills. What they didn't know was that my design firm, Meridian Studios, had grown from a solo freelance operation into a creative powerhouse with 240 employees across 3 offices. We designed brand identities for 18 Fortune 500 companies, created the visual systems for 4 major tech platforms, and last quarter alone had generated $340 million in revenue. But I'd learned early that explaining this to my family was futile. They saw my paint-stained jeans and translated it to poverty. They heard design work and assumed I was making logos on Fiverr for $50. So I'd stopped trying to correct them. Mom's charity gala at the plaza was the kind of event where Manhattan's elite gathered to write checks and compare achievements. It was also the kind of event where my mother felt compelled to explain my existence to her socialite friends. I'd arrived in a simple black dress I'd designed myself, my hair pulled back, no designer labels visible. Cameron had arrived in a Tom Ford suit, fresh from a surgery he'd performed that morning on a senator's wife. Vanessa wore Valentino and diamonds from her latest bonus. Alexis. Mom air kissed me, then immediately turned to the couple beside her. This is my youngest. She's creative. The way she said creative made it sound like a diagnosis. The man, who I recognized as the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, smiled politely. What do you do, Alexis? I run a design studio. How nice, his wife said in that tone that meant, how quaint. My niece does graphic design too. She makes birthday cards. I smiled and said nothing. Dinner was a 10-course affair at tables arranged by social hierarchy. My family was seated near the front. Old money, new influence, the kind of positioning Mom had spent decades cultivating. I was placed at their table, though I noticed I had the least prestigious seat, tucked between Cameron's wife and a venture capitalist who spent the entire first course talking around me to Cameron about medical investments. So the surgery took 14 hours, Cameron was saying, his voice carrying across the table. The aneurysm was in one of the most difficult locations possible. But we got it. Patient's prognosis is excellent. That's my boy, Dad said, raising his glass. Saving lives one surgery at a time. Vanessa jumped in. Speaking of victories, we just closed a $4.7 billion acquisition. It'll be announced next week, but we're already seeing positive market movement on the preliminary filings. Mom beamed. I don't understand all the details, but I tell everyone my daughter is brilliant with money. Then her eyes landed on me and I watched the brightness dim slightly. And Alexis is doing, well, she's keeping busy with her art. She's still doing her little art projects, Mom continued, turning to the guests at our table. A real estate developer and his wife, the pharmaceutical CEO and his wife, and a retired judge. She has such a good eye for color. The real estate developer's wife smiled kindly. That's wonderful. Do you sell your work? I run a design firm, I said again. We work with corporate clients. Oh, like making their websites pretty? She seemed genuinely interested in the way someone might be interested in a child's lemonade stand. Something like that. Can't even afford rent, Dad added, and I felt my face flush despite myself. She lives in this tiny studio in Brooklyn. We've offered to help, but she's stubborn. I can afford my rent just fine, Dad. That's what you say, but we know how expensive the city is. And art doesn't exactly pay the bills. Cameron's wife, Jessica, leaned over. Have you thought about teaching? My friend teaches art at a private school in Westchester. The pay is decent and you'd have summers off. I'm happy with what I'm doing. But surely you want stability? Benefits? A retirement plan? I checked my watch. 8:47 p.m. The Wall Street Journal's morning edition would publish online at midnight. 3 hours and 13 minutes from now. I have all of those things. Vanessa laughed, not unkindly. Alexis, come on. We're family. You don't have to pretend. If you need help, we can help. I could get you an administrative position at my firm. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it's steady income. I don't need help. Pride is expensive, Dad said, cutting into his beef Wellington. Your mother and I didn't raise you to struggle. There's no shame in accepting that the art thing didn't work out and moving on to something more practical. The venture capitalist finally turned his attention to me. What kind of art do you do? I don't do art. I run a design and branding firm. Oh. His interest sparked. Which firm? Meridian Studios. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Meridian Studios in Dumbo? That's the one. He set down his fork completely. You run Meridian? As in you're Alexis Chin? Yes. The table had gone quiet. I know Meridian, he said slowly. We tried to book your team for a rebrand last year. We couldn't get on your schedule. You were booked solid for 18 months. Mom's smile had frozen on her face. I'm sure you're thinking of a different company, Harold. No, I'm not. Meridian Studios. You did the rebrand for Nexus Technology. And that campaign for Altitude Finance that won every design award that year. Your work is featured in the MoMA's permanent collection. MoMA. Dad's voice came out strangled. The pharmaceutical CEO leaned forward. Wait, Meridian did our rebrand 3 years ago. Cost us $8 million, but it was worth every penny. Our brand recognition increased by 340%. I took a sip of water. That was a good project. Your team was very collaborative. You charged us $8 million? He sounded more impressed than upset. Our rate was lower then. That same project would cost closer to $14 million today. Mom's hand had gone to her throat. Alexis, what are you talking about? I'm talking about my company, Mom. Meridian Studios. We employ 240 people. We have offices in New York, Los Angeles, and London. Last year our revenue was $890 million. The retired judge choked on his wine. $890 million? Vanessa whispered. Dollars. Yes. Cameron had gone pale. That's not possible. You live in a studio apartment. I live in a 4,000 square foot loft in Dumbo that I bought for $7.2 million. It's registered under an LLC for privacy. The studio you're thinking of is my personal workshop. I keep it because I like having a separate creative space. Dad was shaking his head. No, we would have known. We would have seen. Seen what, Dad? You never asked about my work. You never visited my office. You never looked at my portfolio or my client list. You decided 7 years ago that I'd failed and nothing I said could change your mind, so I stopped trying to convince you. The venture capitalist was typing on his phone. Jesus Christ. Forbes estimates your company's valuation at $1.2 billion. They project you'll hit unicorn status by next quarter. We're already there, I said quietly. The valuation they're using is from last year. Current estimates are closer to $1.8 billion. Vanessa's face had gone completely white. You're a billionaire? On paper. Most of that is tied up in the company. Liquid assets are closer to $200 million. Closer to $200 million, Mom repeated faintly. The real estate developer was laughing, a disbelieving sound. This is extraordinary. I thought I was sitting next to a struggling artist. Instead, I'm sitting next to one of the most successful entrepreneurs in New York. You were treating me like a struggling artist, I corrected. There's a difference. My phone lit up with a notification. Around the table, several other phones buzzed simultaneously. The pharmaceutical CEO pulled out his phone and his jaw dropped. The Wall Street Journal just posted their morning feature early. The billion-dollar designer, how Alexis Chin built an empire while her family thought she was broke. The blood drained from Mom's face. They interviewed me 3 weeks ago, I said calmly. They wanted to do a piece on young founders who've achieved success outside traditional paths. I told them about my family's assumptions. About dropping out of law school. About the 7 years of being introduced as the disappointment. Dad grabbed his phone with shaking hands. I watched his eyes move across the screen, getting wider with each paragraph. They have quotes from your clients, he whispered. The CEO of Nexus Technology says you're the best strategic designer of your generation. The CMO of Altitude Finance calls you a visionary. There are photos of your offices. They're massive. The London office is smaller. Only 60 people. Cameron was reading over Dad's shoulder. They estimate your personal net worth at $400 million. They list you as one of the 50 most influential designers alive. The net worth is high. I'd put it closer to $350 million, and that's including property and equity. The table had erupted in whispers. People from neighboring tables were pulling out their phones following the notification. I could see the moment the recognition spread through the room. Heads turning, people pointing, whispers growing louder. Mom's friend from the next table rushed over. Patricia, did you see? Your daughter is in the Wall Street Journal. They're calling her a genius. Mom couldn't speak. She just stared at me like she'd never seen me before. The pharmaceutical CEO stood and extended his hand formally. Miss Chin, I apologize for my earlier dismissiveness. It's an honor to have worked with Meridian. Your team's work quite literally transformed our company. Thank you. Your team made it possible. The venture capitalist stood as well. I'm going to email you tomorrow. We should discuss investment opportunities. Meridian is exactly the kind of company our fund looks for. We're not seeking outside investment, but I appreciate the interest. He sat back down looking impressed. Smart. Maintain control. I respect that. Dad was still scrolling through the article, his face a mixture of shock and something that might have been grief. They interviewed us. The reporters called last month asking about you. We told them. Oh God, we told them you were still figuring out your path. The quote is on page 2, I said. Your exact words were, Alexis is taking her time finding something that fits. We support her creative exploration, even if we wish she'd chosen something more stable. Vanessa had tears in her eyes. All those times I offered you jobs. Administrative positions. Entry-level roles. And you're running a billion-dollar company. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? I did tell you. Dozens of times. You didn't listen. Cameron's voice was hoarse. The article says you've been supporting several art programs in underprivileged schools. You donated $15 million to the Brooklyn Museum. You funded an entire wing at Pratt Institute. Art education is important. I wanted to give opportunities to kids who might not otherwise have them. $15 million, he repeated. I make good money as a neurosurgeon, but I couldn't write a check for $15 million. You save lives, Cameron. That's worth more than any check I could write. Mom finally found her voice. But the way you dress. The way you live. You don't look wealthy. What does wealth look like, Mom? Designer labels? Expensive cars? I have those things, I have a Porsche in my garage that I drive maybe twice a month. I have custom suits from Savile Row. But I prefer jeans and t-shirts because I'm usually working with my hands. I prefer being comfortable over being impressive. The retired judge was still reading the article on his phone. They quote several of your employees. All of them describe you as a generous employer, paying well above industry standard, offering full benefits and profit sharing. One designer says you paid off her student loans as a retention bonus. Good employees are hard to find. I believe in compensating fairly. More phones were buzzing. The article was spreading through social media, being shared and reshared. I watched the realization dawn across the room. The struggling artist was actually a mogul. A photographer approached our table. "Miss Chin? I'm from the Times. May I get a photo for tomorrow's business section?" "I'd prefer not to, but thank you." He nodded respectfully and left. No argument, no pressure. That was new, the courtesy that came with revealed wealth. Dad set down his phone with trembling hands. Why let us think you were failing?" "I didn't let you think anything, Dad. You made assumptions. I told you I had clients. I told you I'd hired employees. I told you I'd won awards. You smiled and changed the subject because it didn't fit your narrative of what success should look like. We were worried about you. You were embarrassed by me. There's a difference." Vanessa stood abruptly. "I need air." She walked away from the table and I could see her shoulders shaking. Jessica, Cameron's wife, leaned over. "The teaching job I mentioned. I'm so sorry. That was incredibly condescending." "It's fine. You didn't know. But I should have asked. I should have been curious instead of assuming." Mom's phone was ringing continuously. She ignored it. "Everyone's calling. Everyone's seen the article. What do I tell them?" "Tell them the truth. Tell them your daughter runs a successful company. Tell them you're proud of her. Or don't. I don't actually care what you tell them." The coldness in my voice surprised even me. The gala's host, Mom's co-chair for the charity, approached the table. "Patricia, I had no idea Alexis was so accomplished. We must get her on the committee. Someone with her business acumen would be invaluable." "I'm not interested in committee work," I said before Mom could respond. "But I'm happy to make a donation to the cause." "Oh, that's generous, but it's really the networking and visibility that—" "I'll donate $2 million tonight. You can announce it from the stage if you'd like." She gaped at me. $2 million? "The work you're doing with arts education is important. Consider it seed funding for next year's program expansion." She actually curtsied before walking away. Mom looked like she might be sick. You can just write a check for $2 million? "I can write a check for considerably more than that if necessary. But $2 million felt appropriate for tonight." Cameron returned to the table, having composed himself. "I looked up your company's client list. You've worked with 37 Fortune 500 companies. You designed the interface for Horizon, the app that 3 billion people use." 3 billion, Alexis. It was a good project. Challenging scope, but the team pulled it together. "The team you built," he said. "The company you created. The empire you grew from nothing while we all thought you were struggling." Dad's voice came out broken. "At Thanksgiving I told Uncle Richard you were still freelancing. I said it apologetically, like I was confessing a failure. Uncle Richard's son is a mid-level manager at a regional bank, and I was embarrassed that you weren't doing as well as he was." "Uncle Richard's son makes $90,000 a year," I said. "I'm happy for him. That's a solid living. But yes, Dad, I'm aware you've been positioning me as the family failure. The article says you're one of the youngest self-made entrepreneurs to hit the billion-dollar mark. They compare you to Steve Jobs and Sarah Blakely. Journalists like comparisons. It makes for better headlines." Vanessa returned, her makeup repaired but her eyes still red. "I tried to get you an admin job. An admin job. At my firm. Where I manage other people's billions. And you're worth more than most of my clients. Your offer came from a place of care. I understand that. Do you really? Because I think you must hate us." "I don't hate you, Vanessa. I'm just tired. Tired of defending my choices. Tired of being the cautionary tale at family dinners. Tired of being introduced as the one who chose creativity over stability, like it was a character flaw." The venture capitalist cleared his throat. "Miss Chin, I have to ask, what's your end game? Most founders your age are looking for acquisition opportunities, exit strategies. But the article suggests you're committed to staying independent. Meridian isn't for sale. We have complete creative control, we choose our clients, and we build things we're proud of. Money is wonderful. It provides security and freedom. But the work itself, the ability to create without compromise, that's irreplaceable. He nodded slowly. That's principled. Rare but principled. Mom's phone rang again. This time she answered it. Hello? She's here. No, I don't have a comment. Please stop calling. She ended the call and looked at me with something like desperation. The press wants statements. About you, about the family, about why we never mentioned your success. Tell them the truth. You didn't mention it because you didn't know about it. But we should have known. We're your parents. Yes, I said simply. You should have. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Dad was reading another article that had just posted. Forbes just put out a reaction piece. They're calling tonight the most dramatic reveal of the year. They're comparing it to that time the Walmart heir showed up to shareholder meetings in a pickup truck. I didn't plan the timing, I said. The Wall Street Journal chose their publication schedule. The fact that it coincided with Mom's gala was coincidental. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. I'd known the article would publish tonight. I'd known it would create a scene. Maybe part of me had wanted this. The public validation, the undeniable proof, the moment when everything they'd assumed was proven wrong. Cameron was pulling up more search results. There are already 50 articles about you. Business Insider, TechCrunch, Fast Company. They're all running stories. The designer who built a billion-dollar empire in secret. Why Alexis Chen's family had no idea she was wealthy. The stealth billionaire. I wasn't exactly stealthy. I just wasn't loud. Jessica spoke up quietly. The article mentions you bought your parents' mortgage 3 years ago when they were facing foreclosure. You paid it off completely and never told them. Mom's head snapped up. What? The house in Scarsdale, I said. You were underwater after the market crash, facing foreclosure. I bought the note from the bank and forgave the debt. The house is yours, free and clear. I had my lawyers structure it so you'd never know. Dad's face crumbled. That's why the foreclosure notice disappeared. We thought the bank had made an error. We thought we'd gotten lucky with a modification. You did get lucky. You just didn't know I was the reason. How much was it? Mom whispered. $1.4 million. It was nothing, Mom. I just closed a deal worth $80 million. Paying off your house was a rounding error. A rounding error, she repeated, her voice rising. Our entire mortgage was a rounding error to you and you didn't tell us? What would I have said? By the way, I just paid off your house with the pocket change from my design empire that you don't believe exists. You would have refused. You would have been insulted. So I did it quietly and let you think you'd gotten lucky. Vanessa was crying openly now. We don't deserve you. Maybe not. But you're my family and I love you anyway. The gala host returned to the stage to make announcements. But before she could begin, someone in the crowd shouted, "Tell us about Alexis Chen." Others joined in. Speech. We want to hear from Alexis. Mom looked at me with panic. They want you to speak. I'm not here to make a speech. But the crowd was insistent, applause building until the host returned to our table. Miss Chen, would you mind saying a few words? Everyone's very excited about the news. I'm really not prepared. Please, Mom said quietly. Please, Alexis. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in 7 years. Respect. Uncertainty. But underneath it all, genuine curiosity about who I actually was. I stood slowly and walked to the stage, very aware that everyone in the room was watching me with new eyes. The host handed me the microphone. I looked out at hundreds of faces, Manhattan's elite, people who'd dismissed me an hour ago and now hung on my every word. I didn't expect to speak tonight, I began. But since you're all curious, I'll keep this brief. 7 years ago, I dropped out of law school to pursue design. Everyone told me I was making a mistake. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer. My professors said I was throwing away a guaranteed career. My friends worried I'd end up broke and struggling. The room was completely silent. And for 7 years, most people, including my own family, assumed I had failed. They saw my paint-stained clothes and assumed poverty. They heard designer and thought starving artist. They made assumptions based on their own limited definitions of success. I paused, letting that sink in. Here's what I learned. Other people's assumptions about your life have no bearing on your actual life. Their doubts don't diminish your achievements. Their lack of vision doesn't limit your potential. Success doesn't require an audience. It just requires commitment, hard work, and the courage to pursue something you believe in even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy. Applause started to build, but I raised my hand to stop it. But I also learned something painful. When you let people believe the wrong story about you for too long, eventually they'll be shocked by the truth. My family had no idea about my success because I stopped trying to convince them. I let them think what they wanted to think. That was my choice, and it had consequences. I looked directly at my parents. So tonight, if there's anything I want people to take away, it's this. Ask questions. Be curious about the people you love. Don't assume you know their story just because you've decided what their story should be. Success comes in many forms, and some of the most impressive achievements happen quietly without fanfare or permission. The applause this time was thunderous. As I walked back to my seat, people reached out to touch my arm, to congratulate me, to introduce themselves. The photographer I'd turned away earlier caught my eye and raised his camera in a question. This time I nodded. When I sat down, Dad was crying openly. "I'm so sorry, Alexis. I'm so incredibly sorry." "I know. Can we start over? Can we learn who you actually are?" "That depends. Do you want to know who I am, or do you want to know the billionaire the Wall Street Journal wrote about? Because those are different things." He wiped his eyes. "I want to know my daughter. The real one. Not the version I invented in my head." Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "Will you have dinner with us? Just us, no guests, no pressure. Will you tell us about your work? About your life? About everything we've missed?" "Yes. I'd like that." Vanessa leaned over. "And maybe you could tour us through your office? Show us what you do." "I can arrange that." Cameron smiled, a genuine smile without the competitive edge I'd gotten used to. "I want to hear everything. And I want to apologize for every time I implied your work wasn't real." Apology accepted. My phone was buzzing continuously now. Messages from employees, clients, friends who'd seen the news. Media requests were flooding in. My head of PR had sent me 17 texts in the last 10 minutes, all in capital letters. But I silenced my phone and turned my attention back to my family. They looked different now. Smaller somehow, like they'd been operating with a false sense of scale and had finally seen the actual dimensions of the world I'd built. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People approached our table all night wanting to talk about my work, to pitch ideas, to network. My parents watched in amazement as CEOs and venture capitalists treated me like a peer, like someone whose time was valuable, whose opinion mattered. At the end of the night, as we walked out of the plaza, Dad pulled me aside. "The article mentioned you have 3 board seats at major companies, that you advise startups, that you mentor young designers, that you've created a foundation that funds art programs in 50 cities. Yes. All while we thought you were barely getting by. Yes. That must have been lonely." The observation surprised me with its accuracy. Sometimes. But I had my team. My clients. People who understood what I was building. "But not your family." "No. Not my family." He looked up at the night sky, stars barely visible through Manhattan's light pollution. "I'll never forgive myself for missing this. For missing you. You don't have to carry that forever, Dad. We have time now. We can build something new." The article said you named the company Meridian because it means the highest point and a line that runs true. I never asked you why you chose that name. Because I wanted to build something that reached for the highest point of creativity while staying true to my vision. Everything I do comes back to that principle. He nodded slowly. "That's beautiful. That's really beautiful, Alexis." My car pulled up, a black Tesla that I'd ordered through an app. Not the Porsche which was still in my garage. Not a flashy statement. Just quiet, efficient transportation. "Can I drop you somewhere?" I asked. Dad shook his head. "Your mother and I are going to walk for a while. I think we need to talk. To process all this." "Okay." He hugged me then, longer than he had in years. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "I should have said that every day and I'm sorry I didn't. But I'm saying it now. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Thank you, Dad. I climbed into the car and watched through the window as my parents stood together on the sidewalk, having what looked like an intense conversation. Cameron and Vanessa were nearby, both on their phones, probably fielding calls about me. As the car pulled away, I checked my messages. My head of PR's latest text read, "This is the biggest press day we've ever had. Your profile has increased 4,000%. We need to schedule a media strategy meeting ASAP." I typed back, "Tomorrow. Tonight I just want to go home. Home to my loft in Dumbo. Home to my workshop where I still spent hours every week designing by hand, creating the work that had started all of this. Home to the life I'd built while everyone thought I was failing." The validation felt good. The revelation had been satisfying. But the real victory had happened 7 years ago when I'd walked away from law school and chosen to build something meaningful on my own terms. Everything after that, the clients, the revenue, the billion-dollar valuation, was just proof that I'd been right all along. My phone lit up one more time. A text from Mom. "Thank you for paying off our house. Thank you for never giving up on your dreams. Thank you for being you even when we couldn't see it. I love you so much." I typed back, "I love you too, Mom. See you for dinner next week. I'll tell you everything." And this time I knew she'd actually listen. I was 32 when I realized I'd spent 20 years being my family's unpaid catering service. Started when I was 12 and made brownies for a school bake sale. They sold out in 15 minutes and Mom declared I had the gift. By 13 I was baking birthday cakes for cousins. By 15 I was cooking Thanksgiving sides. By 18 I was responsible for every family gathering's entire dessert spread. By 32 I was apparently the family's personal chef, event coordinator, caterer, server and cleanup crew, all rolled into one convenient, never-complaining daughter. The expectation had calcified into obligations so gradually that I didn't notice until it was already choking me. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, every celebration. If there was food involved, it was my responsibility. Not my job. My responsibility. The difference being that jobs come with paychecks and appreciation. Responsibilities just come with criticism when you fail to meet impossible standards. My sister Caroline never cooked. "I'm not good at it," she'd say with a careless shrug, as if being bad at something was a valid excuse for never helping. She'd show up to family dinners with a bag of store-bought rolls and somehow that was enough. She was praised for contributing, while I'd spend 3 days preparing a meal that would be consumed in 45 minutes and leave me with 6 hours of cleanup. My brother Marcus was too busy with work. He was a regional sales manager who somehow had time for golf every weekend but couldn't possibly help with a family dinner. My parents had decided somewhere along the way that cooking was my thing, which meant it was entirely my burden. Dad would pat my shoulder and say, "Nobody does it like you, Jen," as if that was payment. Mom would critique every dish, "A little dry, too much salt, your grandmother's version was better," while eating 3 portions. But Easter 2024 was when everything crystallized into perfect, infuriating clarity. It was March 10th when Mom called. I was at my actual job. I worked as a food scientist for a restaurant supply company, developing recipes and testing ingredients. Ironic, right? I got paid to create food for strangers but not for family. "Jennifer, we need to discuss Easter," Mom announced without preamble. No greeting, no, "How are you?" just straight to demands. "Okay," I said cautiously. "We're hosting the entire family this year. All 4 branches. I've already invited everyone." My stomach dropped. "All 4 branches? Mom, that's 80 people, give or take. Your Aunt Patricia's bunch is coming from Ohio. Uncle Ray's family from Tennessee. The whole Georgia crew. Plus our local relatives. It'll be wonderful having everyone together." 80 people, I repeated, my voice hollow. "I know it's a big undertaking, but you're so good at this. I've already told everyone you're handling the meal." "You told them I'm handling the meal?" "Well, yes. Who else would do it? Caroline can't cook and Marcus is useless in the kitchen. Your father has his golf tournament that week, so he'll be preparing for that. I'll be busy getting the house ready for guests. So naturally you're our chef." "Naturally. Mom, cooking for 80 people isn't just making a bigger version of Sunday dinner. That's restaurant-level catering. That's a full commercial kitchen operation." "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's just Easter dinner. Ham, sides, desserts. You've made Easter dinner dozens of times. For 12 people. Not 80. Jennifer, don't make this difficult. The family is counting on you. The family is counting on you. The magic phrase that had ruled my life for 2 decades. The guilt trip that had convinced me to sacrifice countless weekends, hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars in groceries I'd purchased myself because you're already at the store anyway. When is Easter? I asked, though I already knew. March 31st. 3 weeks away. Plenty of time. Plenty of time to plan, shop for, prepare, cook, serve, and clean up after a meal for 80 people. By myself. For free. While working my actual full-time job. I'll send you the guest list, Mom continued. And make sure you do that asparagus casserole, you know, the one with the cheese? And those dinner rolls, the soft ones. Oh, and Aunt Patricia is gluten-free now, so you'll need alternatives. And Marcus's new girlfriend is vegan. Can you do a separate vegan menu? Nothing that looks like health food. She doesn't like to feel singled out. A gluten-free menu. A vegan menu. For 80 people. In 3 weeks. While working 45 hours a week at my actual paying job. Oh, and Jennifer? Make it special this time. Last Christmas your mashed potatoes were lumpy. That was the moment. The exact second when something inside me snapped cleanly in half. Last Christmas I'd made mashed potatoes for 35 people from scratch with real butter and cream, while also preparing 2 turkeys, 3 casseroles, a green bean almondine, glazed carrots, homemade cranberry sauce, stuffing, gravy, and 5 different pies. And they were lumpy. Because I'd been cooking alone for 11 hours straight and my hand mixer had died halfway through and I'd had to mash 12 pounds of potatoes by hand while simultaneously preventing the gravy from burning. And instead of "thank you," I got criticism. "Sure, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'll handle everything. It'll be perfect. That's my girl. I knew I could count on you. I'll text you the list. Love you, sweetie." She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Pure, crystalline rage. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind. The kind that makes decisions. I opened a new browser tab and searched for flights to the Bahamas. I didn't tell anyone my plan. I learned that from coordinating surprise parties. The key to a successful surprise is absolute information control. For the next 3 weeks I played the role perfectly. I asked Mom for the guest count updates. I requested dietary restrictions. I created elaborate shopping lists and shared them in the family group chat. I discussed menu options with my mother, who had opinions about everything and solutions for nothing. The ham should be honey glazed. No, wait, brown sugar. Actually, what about maple? Can you do 3 different hams so everyone has options? Sure, Mom. And make those little pastry things, the ones with the spinach. What are they called? Spanakopita. Yes, those. Everyone loved those at Caroline's baby shower. Make a lot. How many? I don't know, enough for everyone. You'll figure it out. Enough for everyone. At 1 spanakopita per person, which was absurdly low, that was 80 individual hand-wrapped pastries. Realistically, for appetizers before a meal, you'd want 3 per person. 240 spanakopita. No problem, I said. I made lists. Extensive, detailed, professional-level catering lists. I researched recipes for large quantity cooking. I priced out industrial-sized roasting pans. I calculated cooking times for multiple ovens running simultaneously. I created a detailed timeline. When to start prep work 3 days before. When to begin cooking 2 days before. When each dish needed to enter the oven. When each dish needed to come out, resting times, serving temperatures, everything. I shared all of this with my family. Look how prepared I am. Look how seriously I'm taking this. Look how much I care about making this perfect for you. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? This was what I did. This was who I was. Reliable Jennifer, always coming through, never complaining, the family's personal food miracle worker. Caroline texted me, "The menu looks amazing. Can't wait. I'll bring paper plates all." Paper plates. For 80 people. For Easter dinner. That was her contribution, offered as a joke. Marcus sent a thumbs-up emoji to the group chat. That was his entire engagement with 3 weeks of my supposed labor. Dad said, "Looks good, honey. Don't forget Easter Sunday I'm golfing in the morning, so let's do dinner at 2 p.m. instead of noon." He was golfing. On Easter. The day I was supposedly cooking for 80 people. and he wanted dinner delayed so his tea time wouldn't be inconvenienced. Mom responded, "Perfect. That gives Jennifer extra time in the morning to get everything ready. Extra time. To cook for 80 people. Alone. Sounds great." I replied cheerfully. I was done on March 29th, the Thursday before Easter. I'd arranged everything perfectly. I'd submitted my vacation request at work weeks earlier, taking a long weekend for family obligations. Approved without question. I'd bought my plane ticket using credit card points I'd been hoarding for years. Flight 847 to Nassau, departing 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, March 30th. Landing at 3:52 a.m. on Easter Sunday. I'd booked a beachfront resort for a week. All-inclusive. Meals prepared by someone else, served to me with zero cleanup required. I'd packed my suitcase Thursday night. Sundresses, swimsuits, sunscreen, a stack of novels I'd been meaning to read for 3 years. On Friday I bought a postcard. A beautiful aerial shot of a Bahamas beach. Impossibly turquoise water, white sand, palm trees. On the back I wrote in my neatest handwriting. "Dear family. Greetings from paradise. Currently enjoying Easter brunch prepared by professional chefs while sitting on a beach. The food is incredible and I didn't have to cook a single bite. I hope you all enjoy your Easter dinner. There should be plenty of restaurants open that deliver. Might I suggest ordering from several places to accommodate the dietary restrictions? Or perhaps Caroline could cook, since she's contributed paper plates to approximately 40 family gatherings without ever actually preparing food. Or Marcus could step up for once, since he's apparently not too busy when it involves activities he enjoys. Or Mom, you could cook the meal you volunteered me to make without asking if I was willing or able. But most likely you'll all stand around an empty kitchen confused and angry, wondering why I wasn't there to serve you. Here's why. I'm done being your unpaid servant. I'm done sacrificing my time, money, and sanity so you can enjoy meals you never thank me for. I'm done being criticized while doing work none of you would ever consider doing yourselves. You wanted Easter dinner? You should have planned Easter dinner. You should have shopped for Easter dinner. You should have cooked Easter dinner. But you didn't. Because you thought I would. As I always do. Not anymore. Enjoy the holiday. I certainly am. Jennifer. I addressed it to my parents' house and mailed it Friday afternoon. First-class mail, guaranteed delivery by Saturday. Then I went home, ordered Thai takeout and watched movies all evening. I slept 10 hours that night, the best sleep I'd had in months. Saturday was gloriously normal. I got coffee. I went to the gym. I got my nails done. I had lunch with my friend Keisha, who knew my plan and thought it was the most justified thing I'd ever heard. "They're going to lose their minds," she said, grinning. "That's the idea. You're not even a little bit guilty?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said, surprised by my own certainty. "I spent 20 years feeling guilty for not doing enough, not being good enough, not making it perfect enough. I'm done with guilt. What do you think they'll do? Panic. Scramble. Probably try to order catering at the last minute and discover that every decent caterer has been booked for Easter for months. Maybe they'll actually have to cook something themselves. More likely they'll order pizza for 80 people and spend the whole day complaining about me. And you'll be face down in the ocean, drunk on rum punch, not thinking about them at all." We clinked our glasses together. "You're my hero," Keisha said. At 9 p.m. on Saturday I took an Uber to the airport. I checked my single suitcase, breezed through security and sat at my gate watching my phone, which I would turn off the moment I boarded. The postcard would arrive at my parents' house sometime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Sunday. Right in the middle of their growing panic when I didn't show up at 8 a.m. to start cooking. At 11:47 p.m., Flight 847 pushed back from the gate. I turned off my phone, accepted a complimentary ginger ale from the flight attendant, and closed my eyes as we lifted into the night sky. By sunrise I was in the Bahamas. By 8 a.m. Easter morning I was checked into my resort, changed into a swimsuit and walking down to the beach. At 10:30 a.m., around the time my family was probably wondering where I was floating in bathwater warm ocean water, staring up at an impossibly blue sky. At 1 p.m., when they were certainly panicking, I was eating conch fritters and drinking a rum runner at a beachside bar. At 2 p.m., when 80 hungry relatives were supposedly arriving to my parents' house, I was getting a massage at the resort spa. I didn't turn my phone on until 8 p.m. that evening after I'd had dinner, someone else cooked it, watched the sunset spectacular, and returned to my room feeling more relaxed than I had in years. 376 missed calls. 842 text messages. 127 voicemails. I poured myself a glass of wine from the minibar, settled into the balcony chair with my phone, and started reading the carnage. The messages came in waves, tracking the evolution of their Easter disaster in real time. 8:15 a.m. Mom, where are you? You should be here by now. 8:47 a.m. Mom, Jennifer, call me immediately. We need to start cooking. 9:23 a.m. Mom, this is not funny. 80 people are coming in less than 5 hours. Where are you? 9:30 a.m. Caroline, Mom is freaking out. Where are you? 10:05 a.m. Mom, I just got your postcard. I cannot believe you would do this to your family. Call me now. 10:12 a.m. Dad, Jennifer and Morrison, you call your mother right now. This is completely unacceptable. 10:15 a.m. Caroline, are you kidding me right now? You're in the Bahamas? 10:30 a.m. Marcus, what the hell, Jen? Mom's crying. Get home now. 10:47 a.m. Mom, I'm calling every restaurant in town. Everything is closed or booked. How could you do this? 11:15 a.m. Caroline, I can't believe how selfish you are. You ruined Easter. 11:43 a.m. Aunt Patricia, your mother just told us there's no dinner. We drove 6 hours from Ohio. What is wrong with you? 12:20 p.m. Mom, we're ordering pizza. Pizza. For Easter. I hope you're happy. 12:45 p.m. Marcus, everyone is asking about you. This is so embarrassing. You've humiliated the entire family. 1:15 p.m. Caroline, 80 people are eating Domino's pizza on Easter because you decided to take a vacation. You're a terrible person. 1:50 p.m. Uncle Ray, never thought I'd see the day where the Morrison family served pizza on Easter. Your grandmother would be ashamed. 2:30 p.m. Mom, people are leaving. They drove hours to be here and we're serving fast food. This is the worst Easter of my life. 3:15 p.m. Dad, you've burned your bridges, Jennifer. Don't expect to be welcome at family events anymore. 4 p.m. Aunt Patricia, we left. Didn't even stay for dinner. 6 hours driving each way for pizza we could have had at home. Thanks for nothing. 5:30 p.m. Caroline, Mom's in her room crying. Dad's furious. Marcus and I had to deal with 80 angry relatives asking where you were. I will never forgive you for this. 6:45 p.m. Marcus, the family group chat is blowing up. Everyone's talking about what you did. You're officially the family outcast. Hope your vacation was worth it. 7:20 p.m. Mom, I just want to understand why. How could my own daughter hurt me like this? What did I do to deserve this cruelty? And then, buried in the avalanche, one message from my cousin Stephanie, who I'd always liked. 3:30 p.m. Stephanie, hey Jen. Saw your postcard. Mom, Aunt Patricia. Let me read it. Just wanted to say, good for you. Seriously. I've watched you cook for this family for years and never get thanked. You deserve that beach. Enjoy every minute. Palm tree. I read through everything twice, sipping my wine, feeling nothing. No guilt. No regret. No urge to apologize or explain or fix it. Just peace. I composed one response to the family group chat. I'm in the Bahamas, as you've discovered. I'll be here for a week. My phone will remain off for most of that time. When I return, I'll be happy to have a conversation with anyone interested in understanding why this happened. But let me be clear right now. I will never cook for a family gathering again unless I'm compensated appropriately, thanked genuinely, and treated with respect. Your emergency is not my responsibility. Your poor planning is not my problem. And your anger at facing consequences for taking me for granted is not my concern. Enjoy the pizza. Then I turned off my phone again and went to get another drink. The week in the Bahamas was exactly what I needed. I swam. I read 4 books. I ate meals I didn't prepare and didn't clean up after. I talked to strangers at the beach bar who thought my escape story was hilarious and justified. I went snorkeling. I watched sunsets. I slept 10 hours every night. I didn't think about my family except to feel a mild, distant satisfaction that they were finally experiencing what it felt like when I wasn't there to manage everything. On day 4, I turned on my phone briefly to check messages. The volume had reduced dramatically. Mom, we need to talk when you get home. Caroline, still not over this. Marcus, whatever. And then, Keisha, girl, you're famous. Your cousin Stephanie posted about what happened on her Instagram story and it went viral on TikTok. People are calling you a hero. There's literally a hashtag Jennifer in the Bahamas with people posting their own stories of family exploitation. You started a movement. Face with tears of joy. I downloaded TikTok, which I'd never had before, and searched the hashtag. Sure enough, thousands of videos. People sharing stories of being expected to cook for huge family gatherings for free. People showing their own escape plans from family obligations. People raising glasses to Jennifer in the Bahamas hero we all needed. Stephanie had posted the full text of my postcard with a video of the empty Easter table and the pizza boxes. Her caption, my cousin was expected to cook for 80 people alone for free, while the rest of us contributed nothing. He went to the Bahamas instead. This is what we deserved. Stop exploiting your family members' labor and calling it tradition. It had 4.7 million views. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. The way I would do the same thing. This is what boundaries look like. 80 people? By herself? No, ma'am. Jennifer is living her best life and I'm here for it. The family is mad they actually had to face their own entitlement. Why didn't literally anyone else offer to help cook? Oh, right, because they're all users. There were negative comments too, of course. Family is supposed to help each other. This is so selfish. She could have at least warned them. But Stephanie and hundreds of others were responding to those. She did help for 20 years. They never reciprocated. She did warn them with every shopping list and timeline she sent that nobody else engaged with. This is what happens when you take someone for granted. I took a screenshot of the hashtag, sent it to Keisha and turned my phone off again. I was famous for refusing to be exploited. I'd accidentally become the spokesperson for family boundaries. I could live with that. I flew home on April 7th, tanned and rested and completely at peace with my decisions. My apartment felt like a sanctuary. I unpacked slowly, did laundry, organized my kitchen. The kitchen I controlled, where I cooked only for myself on my own schedule without criticism. On April 8th, I turned my phone on fully and kept it on. The message volume had slowed to a trickle. Most of the family had said their piece and were now in the silent treatment phase, which honestly felt like a gift. But there were 3 new messages from the past 2 days. Mom, your cousin made us famous on the internet. People I don't even know are commenting on my Facebook saying I exploited you. I'm getting attacked by strangers. You need to tell her to take it down. Caroline, thanks to you and Stephanie, I'm getting hate messages saying I'm a lazy sister who never helps. This is affecting my life. Fix it. Stephanie, hey, hope you saw the TikTok. Sorry if I made things worse, but honestly I was so mad watching Easter happen. You were right to leave. Let me know when you're back, we should get coffee. Red heart. I responded only to Stephanie. Back now. Coffee this week would be great. And thank you for having my back. I didn't respond to Mom or Caroline. They wanted me to fix their problem. The problem of being publicly accountable for their behavior. That wasn't my responsibility. On April 10th, Mom called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mom. Jennifer. Her voice was strained, formal. We need to talk about Easter. Okay. What you did was unacceptable. You embarrassed this family. You humiliated me in front of 80 relatives. You caused your cousin to attack us on the internet. You... Mom, I interrupted quietly. Let me ask you a question. How much time did you expect me to spend preparing Easter dinner for 80 people? Silence. Because I calculated it. Shopping for ingredients. 8 hours minimum, probably spread across 3 different stores to get everything. Prep work. 20 hours. That's chopping, marinating, pre-cooking, organizing. Cooking day. 16 hours at minimum, probably 20 with overlapping oven schedules and timing coordination. Serving and cleanup. 6 hours. That's 50 hours of work, Mom. That's more than a full-time job for 1 week. And you expected me to do it for free by myself while working my actual job and then criticize the result. You're good at cooking. It's your thing. It's my career. Which is why I understand that what you asked me to do is worth thousands of dollars if you hired a professional caterer. But you didn't want to pay a caterer. You wanted free labor from me like you've gotten for 20 years. We're family. Family helps each other. Family helps each other, I repeated. So why didn't Caroline help? Why didn't Marcus? Why didn't you? Why was I the only one responsible for making Easter happen? Because you're the one who's good at it. So being good at something means I have to do it for free, forever, for everyone else's benefit? I didn't realize you were counting the hours, Jennifer. I thought you enjoyed cooking for family. I did enjoy it, Mom. Past tense. I enjoyed it when it was occasionally, when people appreciated it, when I had help, when someone said thank you. I stopped enjoying it when it became an expectation, an obligation, a thankless burden that I carried alone while everyone else criticized my efforts. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, your father says you're not welcome at the house anymore. Okay. That's all you have to say? Okay. What do you want me to say, Mom? I'm sorry I didn't sacrifice myself for your convenience. I'm sorry I finally set a boundary. I'm sorry I chose myself for once. I want you to understand that you hurt me. And I want you to understand that you hurt me. For 20 years. Every time you took my labor for granted. Every time you criticized instead of thanked. Every time you expected me to drop everything for family while never reciprocating. Every single time you treated my time, my skills, and my effort as worthless. That hurt, Mom. Continuously. For 2 decades. I never meant to hurt you. I know. But intent doesn't erase impact. You didn't mean to exploit me, but you did. You didn't mean to take me for granted, but you did. You didn't mean to make me feel invisible and unappreciated, but you did. And when I finally stood up for myself, you called me cruel. He started crying. I just wanted a nice Easter for the family. Then you should have planned a nice Easter. You should have hired a caterer or organized a potluck where everyone contributed equally, or scaled back to a reasonable size. You had a dozen options. You chose the one where I did everything and you did nothing. What do you want from me, Jennifer? It was a good question. What did I want? I want you to acknowledge that what you asked was unreasonable. I want you to apologize for taking me for granted. I want you to understand that if you want me in your life going forward, things have to change. I'm not your personal chef. I'm not your free caterer. I'm your daughter and I deserve to be treated with respect. And if I don't agree, then I guess Dad's already made that decision, hasn't he? I'm not welcome at the house. That's fine. I'll build a life without family dinners. I'm already doing that. You'd really cut us off over this? Mom, you cut me off. You cut me off every time you reduced me to a cooking appliance instead of treating me like a person. I'm just making official what's already been true. I'm done being used. More crying. Then, I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need. She hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next month, things shifted in unexpected ways. Stephanie and I became genuinely close. We got coffee, then dinner, then started a weekly tradition of trying new restaurants together. She was the family member I'd always wished I had. Someone who saw me as a person, not a service provider. Caroline sent me a long text 3 weeks after Easter. I've been thinking about what you said and about what people have been saying online. I don't think you're right about everything, but I'm starting to see that maybe we took you for granted. I never thought about how much work you were doing because it always seemed so easy for you. But it probably wasn't easy, was it? I'm not ready to apologize yet, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it. It wasn't an apology, but it was a crack in the wall. I take it. Marcus didn't reach out at all. That was fine. We'd never been particularly close. Dad remained firm in his position that I was unwelcome, which honestly felt like a relief. No more obligatory Sunday dinners where I cooked for everyone. No more holidays spent in the kitchen while everyone else relaxed. No more pretending we had a healthy relationship when we clearly didn't. Mom called again in mid-May. I've been talking to a therapist, she said without preamble. About Easter. About you. About our family dynamics. Okay. She said I've been emotionally dependent on you performing specific roles in the family, and that I never gave you permission to be anything other than those roles. She said I exploited your labor and your good nature, and that your reaction was a healthy boundary, not a betrayal. I sat down, stunned. Mom, I'm not saying I agree with everything she said, Mom continued quickly. But she made some points I couldn't ignore. You did cook for this family for 20 years. You did it well and you did it without complaint, and we never thanked you properly. We never paid you. We never even helped you. And then I asked you to do something genuinely impossible, and I got angry when you refused. You didn't give me a chance to refuse, I said gently. You told me I was doing it, then hung up. I refused by not showing up. I know. And that's on me. I should have asked if you were willing and able. I should have offered to hire help. I should have split the work among multiple people. I should have done a lot of things differently. Yeah. You should have. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I'm genuinely sorry. You deserved better from me. I felt tears prickling my eyes. Thank you for saying that. I can't undo 20 years of taking you for granted. But I want to do better going forward. If you're willing to give me that chance. What does better look like, Mom? It looks like if I want you at a family event, I invite you as a guest, not as staff. It looks like if we want a family meal, we hire a caterer or do a potluck or go to a restaurant. It looks like I see you as my daughter first, not as the person who makes my life easier. It looks like respect. I'd like that, I said softly. Your father is still angry. He might not come around. That's his choice. Will you come to Sunday dinner? Not to cook. Just to eat. Caroline already said she'd handle the meal. She's making lasagna, apparently. It won't be as good as yours, but it'll be hers. I smiled. I'll come. I'm writing this from my apartment on a Sunday evening in September, 6 months after the Easter that never happened. I went to Sunday dinner today. Caroline made lasagna. She was right, it wasn't as good as mine, but it was edible and she made it herself and she seemed proud of it. Marcus brought salad and garlic bread from the store. Mom made dessert. I brought wine and flowers. I didn't cook anything. I didn't serve anyone. I didn't clean up afterward. I sat at the table as a guest, as a daughter, as a person who was valued for her presence, not her productivity. Dad wasn't there. He's still holding his grudge, still insisting I owe the family an apology. Mom says she's working on him, but honestly, I don't care if he comes around or not. I'm done waiting for people to decide I'm worthy of respect. The TikTok hashtag Jennifer in the Bahamas still gets occasional new posts. People sharing their own stories of setting boundaries with family, of refusing to be exploited, of choosing themselves. Stephanie still jokes that I'm a social media icon. My business, my actual paid work, is thriving. I developed a new line of restaurant-quality sauces that launched in August and they're selling faster than we projected. I got promoted to senior food scientist. I'm making more money than I ever have and none of it depends on family approval. And I'm planning another vacation. Iceland this time. Solo. Completely for my own enjoyment with no obligations to anyone but myself. Because that's what I learned that Easter. My life is mine. My time is mine. My skills are mine to share or withhold as I choose. And I don't owe anyone access to those things just because we share DNA. The family event didn't fall apart because I wasn't there. The family event fell apart because it was built entirely on my unpaid, unappreciated labor, and when that labor was withdrawn, there was nothing else holding it up. That's not my failure. That's theirs. They wanted Easter dinner? They should have planned Easter dinner. They should have valued the person who'd been making Easter dinner happen for 20 years. They learned that lesson the hard way, standing around an empty kitchen with 80 hungry relatives and a stack of pizza boxes. And I learned mine the easy way, floating in turquoise water under a Caribbean sun, finally free.